I love running Shadowdark, but sometimes I could use some help. In this video, I'm unboxing some of that help, the GM Companion for Shadowdark by Chubby Funster. All right, let's open the box. This is actually the second time I opened the box, thus the tape, because I had some recording issues the first time around. But hey, hopefully the second time will work. Here we go. Here's the GM Companion. It's about the same size as the Shadowdark book. It's a little bit smaller from a, just overall form factor and page count perspective. I think it's about half as many pages. Here you are. It's a nice black shiny book. The idea behind this book is that it gives you a bunch of augmented information, tables, random things for Shadowdark to just kind of help you out as a GM. I run a once a week lunchtime Shadowdark campaign. I don't have a lot of time for prep because I'm also running a number of other campaigns. And so as a result, it's good to just have a book I can open up and do stuff with. It's divided into a couple of different major sections. So we have the world above, the world below, monsters, and treasure. And if you've been following the podcast for any time, you know that I love monsters. That was certainly an attraction for this book. But I really liked these random tables. Basically, they're offering some tweaks to how you do hex crawling. In this one, they're talking about using the regular Shadowdark rules and recommending that each hex has a point of interest instead of having a 1 in 6 chance and a 1 in 20 chance in a dungeon. So they're basically encouraging you to have more points of interest, but that's okay because they give you tables. They give you terrain hazards, settlements, what have you. So you get into here, points of interest. It's, again, similar to what you would have gotten out of the regular book, just expanded for additional biomes. So nice random chart where you can talk about what's happening in a particular area in terms of a location. Like, hey, there's a massive crater. There's a bubbling caldera. And then a development, right? Okay, so there's a hazard. There's recent damage from an earthquake. It's charged with magical energy. And so we've got Arctic, coast, desert, forest, grassland, jungle, mountain, river, and swamp, which is great. My campaign is set in an alternative Nordic North, and so having stuff for mountains and rivers and what have you comes in really handy. Probably won't use the jungle that much, but hey, you can always riff on what comes up in that area, right? So then we get into hazards, which is kind of your standard Shadowdark approach to hazards. There's no actual detailed rules, but they give you an idea of what the difficulty is for each of these, what kind of damage they do. So again, broken up into those self-same biomes like Arctic and coast and desert. And then you roll 2d6 and you've got, say, let's look at forest, right? So under forest, you roll 2d6, and that means like if we rolled a 6, many go for holes, which is a danger if you've ever been backpacking or horseback riding or whatever. And maybe my first die was a 4, and the damage is sharp pine needles or something. So anyway, more hazards is more good. The book has a lot of black and white art, line art, which is nice. So those are hazards and terrain. So right there, I'm already just getting some advantages and helpful stuff for my campaign. Settlements, this is also cool because it extends what you have for settlements in the core rulebook for Shadowdark. So it adds things like, okay, what kind of settlement it is. You can go from crossroads all the way up to capital. Then they add a bunch of different district types. There's a transient district type, a craft district, mercantile, spectacle, which is pretty cool, right? Grandiose, public plaza, botanical. So there's a lot of cool things in here, and I like this idea because it kind of just mixes up your areas within your city. It gives you a little bit more flavor, and it really builds on what's in the core rulebook. I think it helps you when you're scaling up to much larger cities. They also then go into additional shops. So we've got poor shops, wealthy shops, standard shops, and they break it down by, again, what you could find in there. So, a poor shop might be a tanner/dyer. Standard shops could be an apothecary, poisoner, trap maker. Wealthy shops, curse remover, that's pretty cool. Weaponsmith, scrolls and wands, toy maker, cartographer. Taverns, again, this kind of is just good stuff for just random things. In my campaign, it's set in, again, the Nordic North. It's very much a candles in the dark sort of situation where there are these tiny little villages scattered about. Being able to just randomly roll up some additional taverns because they fled the darkness and need to find some place to rest and recover is super helpful. So you've got your tavern generator and your menu items, which is handy, and then drinks. They offer Farkle as an alternative to your standard dice game that is in the core rules. Haven't done anything with Farkle, haven't done anything with the game in the core rules. Honestly, my family plays a lot of Farkle. I don't, so I can't really speak to it. But hey, for games, is a great option. The other thing that's cool about this book, and I think I may be using these the next time we need to do some downtime, is alternatives to carousing. It's offering class specific carousing option. So for priests, you're getting acts of devotion, what you can do to worship your god or support your religion or whatever, right? So an example would be a focused day of personal reflection and piety centered around performing acts of faith, all the way up to, let's see, your celebration attracts the attention of a wealthy priest. They offer you gifts to aid you in the completion of your spiritual mission. Gain 6 XP and 2 rolls on the treasure table 4 to 6. Uh, Pretty nifty. Combat training to help out our fighter types. It's got some tournaments and duels and that kind of stuff. For wizards, hey, you're not left out. You get a magical study. So things like a day of research and experimental magic in a secluded area. Various herbs and mushrooms are consumed to give you deeper insight. Yeah, deeper insight, I am sure. Oh wait, so those are actually the events. So let me go back a second here. Haha, I'm reading this wrong. So let's see. Oh, no, that's right. So the way that this works the same as carousing. So you have your event, and so this is you're spending your gold to trigger what you're doing for carousing, and then the outcome is what result you actually get. So a training event would be, an intense day of training on specific combat maneuvers and advanced techniques, and then the outcome could be a post-combat drink is unable to overcome the bitterness of participants. The tavern is damaged, and local authorities fine you 20% of your wealth. That's very much in keeping with carousing is the way that you get rid of players' gold. It's a cool subsystem. Again, we had magical study, which I had gotten to before, and so those are your carousing outcomes and options. So I like it. I like that it gives you some different things to do, because I can see if you play long enough, the standard carousing table is going to start to get a little old. Now, venturing into the world below, it's got some cool stuff. Additional charts for random dungeon generation. And I've been using this with my current dungeon, the Deep Crawl, which is a kind of an Underdarkish thing that connects a number of different locations and villages and hazards within my campaign setting. And so being able to kind of toss this out there and randomly roll up some stuff is cool. It's got a lot of miscellaneous things. So we've had this is just the dungeon itself, right? So what's the entrance look like? How big is the site? What type of site is it? What kind of rooms does it have? A hazard, a trap, solo monster, boss monster, that kind of thing. Things that I like about this, additional tables wise, is it gives you a table for NPCs and rival crawlers. So it's cool to have enemies showing up or possible allies showing up. And so you've got the detail, good intentions, kind hearted, or holding a secret meeting. I also like the change over time, like the idea that the dungeon just isn't static, right? So, an example of that would be dusty floor bears signs of recent traffic, alter footprints each time. Slowly fills with water, slime, mud, and sand, or similar material. I like the idea that the dungeon is dynamic and living, which kind of tracks with your whole living cave sort of thing. Different boons and just special effects that are happening within a particular room. Combat aftermath, something happened here, and you find it, right? So there's a trap in the room that still hasn't been triggered. Reinforcements for one side will arrive in 1d4 rounds. Dead zones for things that negatively impact your characters, unique objects, solo monster, monster mob, boss monster. Again, all kinds of good ideas and just inspiration for what you might find in a particular area. They also get into dungeon hazards, so talking about potential hazards for caves and tunnels, ruins, and tombs. I was just talking with David about this last night on our most recent full episode, and I gotta say I struggle with hazards because I really wish there was a little bit more detail around damage and difficulty classes and that kind of stuff. But that's okay. I'll figure it out myself. This book does not extend on that in any way because it just uses the standard rules. But I think it might be an episode that David and I do. It also has got traps, which does have more specifics, right? So rolling logs on a slope. The triggers a pressure plate, and it does a d6 of damage. And of course, you roll randomly on these things to combine, mix and match as needed. And you can have hazards up to loss of hand, loss of leg, killed immediately. So hey, nicely treacherous. Different kinds of traps. You got, magical traps, wounding weapon-like traps. So let's see, what were the first ones? Crushing gaseous and sonic traps. I love traps too, and my deep crawl is going to have a bunch of it's probably hazard / trap type things. Then it gives you some information about how to do NPCs with backgrounds, characteristics, that kind of thing. Another whole section for building out the rival crawlers in detail, like ancestry, class types, that kind of thing, what their names are. Then we get into, hey, monster tables. So it's a combined monster tables for the core rulebook plus this new rule book, we have several pages worth of monsters. There's some overlap with the core book, and some other like expansion sources, but that's okay. I like that there are some new things like elementals in here, and just elemental themed creatures, which can be handy since I'm in the Arctic North. And then things like rock rubs, some classics like giant lizards. So again, monsters are always good. I'm not going to say no to more monsters. Then the treasures section is pretty extensive. So glittering prizes. So you can have, first of all, dungeon dressing, which is just, some random stuff that you find. It might not actually be worth all that much, but it adds to the sense that you are in a dungeon and just random wonders or weirdness, right? So a slightly moist tentacle suction cup. What a find. 3 succulent red berries. Glimmering with dew. That doesn't sound dangerous at all. 2 ivory buttons from a set of nice clothes, which actually have some value. Then you get into an extensive treasure list. I like these two because, like with anything, if you play it long enough, you're going to start seeing things repeat. So even though I haven't played Shadowdark for that long, I like being able to have some additional options that mix things up. It goes through treasure levels. Let's see, how far does it go? Up to 10 plus. So this will have you covered for quite some while. You also have a section on boons, which are benefits you can get that aren't treasure. So oaths and secrets and what have you, which is pretty nifty. Blessings, descriptions for potions, what they look like, what they smell like, quirks they might have, benefits and curses, and then a bunch of stuff for magical armor and weapons, and then utility stuff. I have not gotten too much into the magic item stuff. They do have full write-ups on actual magic items as well, which is nice, not just the random stuff. I've slowly been reading through this section, and I imagine I might grab some stuff because I've been a little treasure poor in my lunchtime game. But in the big scheme of things, we're really only on like session 3, so I like the idea of having more monsters, more treasure items, more random tables, what have you. Super handy book. If you're a GM, I recommend picking it up. It's definitely a nice thing to have on your shelf, and it's a nice go-to when you're just stuck and you need some ideas and you want to roll some dice. So there you go. That's the GM companion for Shadowdark. You can check out the rest of our videos on YouTube and email us your comments at podcast@lairsecrets.com.